Good evening. This is Dr. S.D. Hess,
And I am Dr. Ann Kirsch.
and we are on and off the spectrum. Tonight we have such a special guest. It is our dear friend, Jessica Kligman, who is a musician. I know that I have personally had a wonderful opportunity to sing with you, Jessica. And
Many times.
aside from perfect pitch that I know you have,
Yes, you do.
you've taken your musical abilities and you have extended it into the world of therapy. We are exploring in the last several sessions about the different avenues that parents could think about when it comes to having a child with challenges, whether it's the traditional behavioral play therapy interventions or education or speech, but music therapy. I think that is actually really interesting, and I'm sure that most people don't quite understand what happens in music therapy. I'd love to hear how you had the journey, and then what actually you do, and then finally, we'd like to talk about the fact that you also deal with a very unusual population as well, different from children with autism,
Yeah,
and that
very.
is people who are recovering from addiction.
Mhm.
And that's a twist to the story that most people would never think about. And, in what we are doing with our show, with our podcast, we are trying to weave together how all of these things work. And so your particular participation in this is going to really knock some socks off of some people because it's really, really
Because I'm
interesting. And
because I'm
you
working with
are,
people who are on the spectrum and off the spectrum.
that's
And
right.
on and
Yeah,
off, exactly, on and
yeah.
off the spectrum.
Yes, you're the link.
And with no further ado, Jessica,
Yes.
we'd love to hear your story. But let's start by saying, how did you go from being a musician, a
Yeah.
wonderful musician, to a music therapist? What was that journey about?
Yes.
Well, I spent 20 years as a certified music teacher, a general classroom music teacher, which means that I taught, preschool through high school, um, general music. So, music appreciation, music history, listening, notation, how to read music, how to write music, how to compose, how to play rhythms, how to
Wow.
play instruments, anything and everything that involved that. And uh, in a nutshell, I got tired. I got tired of working in the classroom in a group setting, constantly motivating and the kids that didn't want to be there just really didn't want to be there. And I just felt like my experiences had shown me that when I was making one-on-one connections and like the best ones were helping helping kids figure out that they actually are musical, or helping them figure out that they actually can play X instrument or write music, or find some way in that they never thought was possible.
Uh-huh.
I, that one-on-one was like magic. It was like fuel for me. And so I I left the classroom and retrained over COVID. Actually, it worked out quite well, but I retrained and became a music therapist. The thing that really got me going, excuse me, was that for 7 years of the 20, we were living back in New Jersey, and I taught in a special ed school district. And I taught in two schools that covered the gamut of kids. So all those ages, preschool up through age 21.
Wow.
And some of the kids were autistic, some of the kids were with intellectual disabilities. Many had physical disabilities, developmental disabilities. Some of the kids were medically fragile. I had a student who was in a vegetative coma.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
yeah, but some of these kids lived in hospitals and they came on, specialized buses with their nurses to school every single day. And when they hired me, they were looking for a classroom teacher. And, I just saw an ad and called. And they said, well, are you aware that we're special ed? And I said, oh, no, but I'm a music teacher. So they recommended that I come in and look, observe, which I was happy to do. And I was lucky enough to be able to follow, sort of shadow, the music teacher who was retiring. And I, it most certainly was not the conventional experience of classroom music. But I 100% saw myself doing what she was doing. I already had, I was running an early childhood music program called Music Together. It's a specific curriculum. It's for newborns at the time through age 5. Now it's more, and they're caregivers, they're grown ups, whoever they might be. And that training involved learning how to individuate and learning how to take a song and present it many times because repetition, repetition, repetition is good. And but each time you do it a little differently, right? And you present these songs and these movements in ways that will if you can grab the kid who's a visual learner instead of an auditory learner, great. And if you're grabbing the kid who's a kinesthetic learner and is only going to figure out that move, that rhythm because he's actually putting in his body,
Yeah.
you have to make sure you're doing something that, you know, uh, that reaches that. So I already was very familiar with individuating. I already had several kids with special needs coming through my program because I had a relationship with early interventionists. The early intervention program, they were recommending my program to kids. Um, so, it wasn't like totally off the wall for me. Um, but I asked, why don't you have a music therapist here? And they told me music is part of the core curriculum of the state of New Jersey. And so, they had on site physical therapists and occupational therapists and speech therapists. And the whole 7 years I was there, they were pushing in and out of my classroom. We were working together, like it was amazing. But I wasn't a therapist, I was a teacher. And I was literally just I don't want to say making it up, but like
Yes.
running on instinct more than anything else.
Well,
The
Um,
best kind of teacher. The
yeah,
best kind of teacher. Yes.
absolutely. What
and
I
I learned how to value more the process than the product. Which really kind of takes the pressure off. All of those spring recitals and big shows and everything else that I always had to put on, or the winter recital where we barely met, right? This was wonderful because the process is where all the magic really happens.
Yes.
So I was hooked, completely hooked, by that not only that first week but that first day, I was really hooked. Um, so
Meant
yeah,
to be.
so
so
uh,
you took your
that's
love
what
of
moved me.
music, you took your love of literally kids, you got put into this wonderful special needs environment, and you got some extra training, and here you are.
And I missed them terribly. I loved working there. I
Yeah.
loved it. And the only reason I'm not there is because we moved back to Los Angeles where we originated.
Okay. So I think parents are curious, what goes on in a music therapy session for a special needs child? You know, if they're bringing their kiddo, the child has a diagnosis of being on the spectrum, and let's say the child is nonverbal.
Okay. And how old are they?
I'm gonna say nine.
Mm.
Okay. Okay. Um, the fact that they're nonverbal um, changes some things, but it doesn't change a whole lot of things, truthfully.
Hmm.
What you have to realize with music therapy is that it's purely focusing on the therapeutic goals of that child. If the child is working on communicating, communicating with words, communicating with sounds, or are they working with communicating with their iPad, right? With PECs, with visual pictures, or some
Okay, with the
other
communication
system,
device, sure. Yes.
right? That's all communication. That's all expressive communication. It doesn't have to come out of their mouths.
Mm.
Okay, but so
That's a
if they're
good point.
looking,
Really
yeah,
good point.
so if they're looking to communicate, that's a therapeutic goal. If what they're doing is looking for self-regulation, right? If they have a hard time, um, let's say they can't have what they want right away, and they have a hard time waiting for it. That is a therapeutic goal, right? If they focus on something, hyper focus to the point of mom is saying, okay, Fred, we gotta go, right? It's time to leave. It's time to go and do X and Y, and he will not budge. That's a therapeutic goal. All these different kinds of things. So just to say he's there, he's nonverbal, it depends on what it is we're really working on,
Yes.
right? So uh, when I meet somebody, when I meet a client, I assess them, right? So I have an evaluation and I look at all sorts of things. I look at their fine motor skills and I look at their gross motor skills. I look at their cognition. Are they able to start a new task, like to initiate something?
Mm.
Are they able to stop? Are they able to transition from one room to another or from one task to another, one activity to another? Are they able to communicate what they want, right? If I'm trying to ask them something, are they recognizing that and looking at me? Are they acknowledging that I'm in the room with them,
Right.
right? There are a lot of different levels of things that I am assessing. And one of those things that I'm assessing is also their musical preferences. Because, it's like speaking a language, right? We could have this interview in Norwegian if I could speak Norwegian, say, right? I'd speak Norwegian and you don't, let's say, then we have a problem. Then we need an intermediary or we need AI to create a translation,
Yeah.
Right, right.
something.
Yeah.
It doesn't work by itself, right? Music is the same way. Music is really powerful, but it has to be the right language. It has to be the motivator. Just like you have personal preferences for music, I'm sure, right?
Sure. Sure.
Somebody else does as well. And I can use I have a kid who loves jazz and country.
Mm.
Okay.
That's it. And if you play anything else, he may not tell you to turn it off because he's not that kind of kid, right? But you're going to get way more buy-in if you choose something jazz or something country. You're going to get even more buy-in if you ask him, "Hey, Dale, let's say Dale, right? If, hey, Dale, what should we listen to? I wonder, should we listen to jazz or country right now? And he may say jazz and he may say country. But the fact that he can choose gives him the biggest buy-in, right? He has the most invested.
Brilliant, because he can choose what he wants, he can say it,
Be
or he
empowered.
could point
Exactly.
to whatever he needs to. Yes, wonderful.
So, do you, again, just as informative to families, you come in with instruments, or do you come in with
Okay. If
recordings,
I
or
come into somebody's home, I come in with several instruments, but I also speak with the parent ahead, to find out, do they have instruments in their home already? Do they have a piano? Do they have drums? Do they have toy instruments? What do they have? What does the child engage with on his own,
right?
right? And what is the setup? What is the room that we're going to be working in?
Hmm.
Is there, or do these things exist in that room? Can we arrange to bring those things into that room? Okay. So then I come bringing things accordingly, right? If if they have a piano there or an electric keyboard, fabulous,
Yeah.
right? Um, they may or may not be that motivated by it, whatever. I always bring a guitar. I always bring an assortment of smaller drums. I bring uh, hand percussion, so shakers, egg shakers, or fruit shakers. They look like a big
Yeah.
solid apple, big solid orange, a banana. Um, I have ankle bells or like wrist bells, whatever, that you can tie around your ankles, march around the room with. Rhythm sticks, and then a lot of props like scarves, colored scarves. I have bubbles. I have books. I have a dry erase board and a bunch of different markers. I have a lot of things.
So
And
you bring this cornucopia of musical
because you never
sensory
know,
stimulus.
right? Because you never know what is going to interest that
I think
child.
that's great. I
So,
think
and
that's
I
great.
and
So
I may pull them. I won't pull them all out because that's A, too overwhelming, and
Right.
B, if you shoot the wad right in the beginning, you have no tricks for later.
right.
Right.
So, so I'll pull out some things and lay them out and see what they gravitate to,
Yes.
and then we'll go from there. I always start with a hello song, right? It's important to have a routine, uh, and to start with so that they know that it's always going to be the same. There's going to be differences in the middle, but the shape of the session is the same. It's really important for them to know that that's a safety feature for them,
So you
right?
have a standardization that they know there's a beginning, middle, and end, and it's a very familiar kind of script for them.
Right. And some kids are at the level where they can choose the activities. So we'll make a schedule and we'll say, okay, let's see. First thing is the hello song. Then we're going to do, let's see, do you want to, uh, play on the piano, or do you want to play with the cars, right? And they'll choose, and we write it down. There are many different ways to create a schedule with them, but once that schedule is set,
Hmm.
we set it up. That's our schedule, right? And that also becomes part of the therapeutic process in terms of getting a child who has trouble transitioning from one task to another.
Yes.
They know already, they've developed it, and they can see it as a reminder. Oh, when we finish the hello song, we're going to the next thing, right? And we already know what that is, so it's a little calmer for
It's
them.
great.
And
This
then
is really brilliant.
and then do you see the capacity to generalize these wonderful skills to a child's greater world?
Mm, excuse me, absolutely. First of all, if they're in school, um, we as music therapists will communicate, hopefully, with the teacher or the case manager or anybody else there, right? And if the teacher is working on something, we'll support them in the session, depending upon what it is they're working on. We'll do that as well in some other way in the session.
I think this is
Um,
wonderful. This is wonderful, and no, it's a huge compliment. I, but I also in the introduction I mentioned that you have expansive skills and simultaneous to working with these wonderful special needs kiddos on your alternative days, you work with a very different population.
Hmm.
right.
People who are recovering from addiction, and I wonder if you could take a moment to speak about that.
Yeah, it's currently working with men. I would say the ages have ranged from, let's say, 22 or 23 to 60 something, close to 70 years.
Mm.
And it's in different facilities. They are 30-day residential rehab stays. Um, it's a max of 6 men at a time. So the group is small. They get to be cohesive. They learn how to gel and support each other. And you have these amazing age ranges, right? And you also have, they're not just local. You have guys that fly in to Los Angeles from Georgia, from Tennessee, from
Yes.
like fascinating. So many different, you know, cultural type backgrounds all in
And is
one
there a
room.
specific type of addiction, or the requirement is just to be addicted to some?
Well, this particularly is alcohol. Many of the guys are also dealing with drug addiction, um, but mostly it's alcohol. But
Mhm.
it's all supported, but it's mostly alcohol, substance abuse,
Okay, so
in
then
general.
how does now you've been taking again a musician, now becoming a music therapist. You've worked as a teacher with these kiddos, special needs, and now you also have this other population of addiction to alcohol, possible
Right.
also comorbid drug addiction. What does that look like?
Well, these, like I said, it's a 30-day stay, but it's a staggered entry. So, excuse me, you can have a man coming in, day one, and he's sitting in the room with guys who have been there 14 days, 22 days, looking to discharge in a couple of days, right? Everybody has been there a certain amount of time. So, um, and also, when they first come in, they have either most recently detoxed or they're really still in detox. And sometimes they come down to be in our sessions because it's music, right? Or they hear, oh, wow, this is sounding interesting. And they sit in, but cognitively and physically, they're really not able to be part of what's going on. So they're just observing. Um, again, like I spoke about the kids, it's therapeutic goals. That's what music therapy is. It's using music, using all the elements of music as tools to achieve a therapeutic goal, which is usually a non-musical goal, but nevertheless.
Mhm. But it's
So
a tool then. The
exactly.
music is a tool to achieve the end goal, which is the detox.
No, the detox happens without me. The detox is part of that program.
Oh,
My
I see.
job, my job is to help them during the rest of their stay to do several things as a group. The group goals is what we focus on, because I only have them once a week and I can't focus on individual
I
various
see.
things. So it's the group goals. And group goals are things like improving interpersonal relationships. Big one, right? Because some of them have burned a lot of bridges during their abuse, right?
Yeah.
During their times of abuse. And they have to go back to work and they have to kind of like mend fences and, whatever. So, in improving interpersonal relationships. increasing self-awareness, helping them to figure out what happened, right? The the addiction is not the problem. It's the addiction is like a numbing effect, right? It's a coping skill. It's a really poor coping skill, but it's a coping skill nonetheless. And what are they avoiding, right? What are they trying to what do they need to deal with that they're not dealing with and using this instead? So one of the things is that self-awareness, and then so now that they know that, also helping them develop healthier coping skills. Okay, so that might be learning an instrument, but it also might be um, creating playlists, individualized playlists according to uh, a, a mood or a mental state that they get stuck in, that they have a hard time getting out of. Like, um, let's say, um, frustration, right? They have a very low, let's say they have a very low threshold for frustration. Something just doesn't go right, and they're just like, ah, not okay, it's okay, whatever. No, they really beat themselves up, and it's really hard to get out of that. And I help them create what's called an ISO playlist, which is it's a way of entraining their brain, getting their brain to sort of hook in to the music. And then it's like a prescription. I tell them it's 30 minutes. If you're on your way to feeling that frustration, close the doors, cancel everything, put on your headphones, put on this playlist that you've created yourself. Because remember, it's their own musical preferences that matter, right?
Yeah.
So, we work to find a song that sort of matches that feeling that they have. We don't want a song that's going to make it worse and put them there, but we want a song that just like matches that feeling. And through basically 6 songs, we work them step by step out of that and into a destination that they choose, but I monitor to make sure it's a straight line rather than a circuitous line. So, like, might just be, okay, I'm breathing calmly now, right? So now I'm in an optimal arousal state and I can think, right? So, what does that song feel like? That song's going to maybe have a different tempo. It's not going to be quite as loud and bangy and chaotic, right? It's going to be more regulatory. Um, and and then they put that in a playlist, and that's their medicine,
I,
to help
I
them go
love
through
how
it.
you are giving each individual, whether it's a special needs child or a person struggling with recovery from addiction, the ability to create a relationship through music to help with regulation, to help with preference, to help with gaining control of their environment, which up to that point has eluded them in some
Mm.
fashion than another. I think this is marvelous, and I compliment you. I think we both do, just in the context of being able to switch gears, right, with very different populations. But I see the theme. That
It's the
that
you see, that's interesting. I love the contrast,
yes.
um, because these conversations with these men who are in rehab, some voluntarily and some involuntarily,
Right.
right? Some after a family intervention, but sometimes it's court appointed.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
the conversations that go on in those sessions are quite deep and revelatory sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's I appreciate the adult to adult conversation balanced with working with the children.
It's really wonderful.
So,
It's wonderful for me. I think about the adult that you're working with, but I also think about the child inside of that adult
Yeah.
who, whatever it was that brought them to alcohol or to drugs, and now they're coming out on the other end, and there are many modalities that are being used throughout the week when you're not there, but music is just remarkable for this.
Yeah.
It,
and let me just tell you something else. Music is incredibly powerful. Nobody's going to deny that, right? But the thing about music is that it can help you forget everything, right? It can also help you remember everything.
yes,
And you have to be really, really careful not to trigger anybody,
that's
or to be in a position where you're saying, look, if you are feeling anxious, or if this song is triggering you, let me know, right? We have options. We can turn it off. You can choose to walk outside for a minute. There are, we can choose a different song. Like, there are many ways to go about this, but my job is not to cause harm. Absolutely not.
Well,
Ever.
I have to tell you
it's
what
amazing.
you are. I would tell you that you and the people you work with are blessed, because I can feel the passion and the compassion that you need to have to be with both ends of the population. I appreciate, Anne, your comment about being aware of the child within the adult
Yeah.
who's obviously so injured.
Oh,
And
yeah.
this is a
Oh, yeah.
remarkable instruction for us in terms of how music is used in such a therapeutic way, and different way in terms of capacity and age and developmental placement at any spoken time. And we can't thank you enough
You're
for
welcome.
being with
Thank
us
you
this
so much for
evening
having
and
me.
really
It's really
giving us a
exciting.
Yes.
wonderful understanding of your story so that we can educate our readership. We want to encourage people who really enjoyed this episode to subscribe to On and Off the Spectrum. Please follow us, particularly on YouTube, but we're available on Spotify and on Instagram and and Apple Music and all kinds of wonderful social ways to share this message. But most importantly, we want to thank Jessica tonight for you joining us. I'm Dr. Esty Hess.
And I'm Dr. Ann Kirsch, and I want to thank you so much. And if you have enjoyed watching and you have learned some things, which I suspect everyone has, please follow us. Please join us weekly. Our shows drop every Thursday, and you can find everything that we have shown you so far. You can go over them over and over and over. Send this out to your friends. Let people know that you have watched something that has meant something to you, because that's our goal.
Right. So we thank you again, Jessica. You have touched our hearts.
Yes.
We
Thank
wish
you so
everybody
much.
a good evening.
Yes.
And we look forward to seeing you on another episode of On and Off the Spectrum.
Absolutely.
Have a good night.
Thank you for doing
again,
this.
please.
Thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye, Jessica.